I wanted to discuss and address the differences between the generations of Nikon cameras that we have available to us now. There's a lot of confusion and questions that I get and I see on social media and so forth about, oh, is it better to get a Z6 II or Z6 III? Do you see the difference? Is it worth that jump? And so with every generation and upgrade, there's always these questions going to come up. So I thought I'd address it in one video, the best I can, to try and describe what the major differences are, because there's a lot of specifications, a lot of confusion. So let's give it a go. So there's two main categories that I think we can put it into. So you've got generation 1, which is the old processor. So you've got Z6 I, Z6 II, Z7 I, Z7 II, Z5, Z50, and ZFC, of course. And generation 2, the new processors. We've got ZF, Z6 III, Z8 and Z9, and now the new Z50 Mark II. Well, the first thing to say is that they all share some things. They all have excellent, amazing image quality. Nikon got that nailed down a long time ago. The image results you'll get are going to be fantastic across all the cameras, the colours, the sharpness, depending on the lens. And so you can't go wrong with the image results. You know, a Z6 I will be just as good image quality as Z6 III, but it's all about functionality, and mainly about autofocus. We got asked this a lot, that what's the difference between Z6 I and II? Well, for me and Loz said quite openly in our videos, mainly it's just a card slot. The Z6 II has two of the same processors, but it didn't really equate to much difference in real world shooting, from my experience. So in Z6 II you get an extra card slot and a few other features, like maybe a few more frames per second, a bit bigger buffer, and a few things like that, but it's effectively the same. So if you're looking at a Z6 II, maybe look at a Z6 I and figure out if those differences are actually that great to make any difference. And that's the same for Z7 I and II. Z7 has the higher megapixel, and which is really good for wildlife, landscape, but if you don't need the megapixels, drift back to the Z6. And the Z6 also has better low light capability, but in real world use, and depending on the lens, I didn't find them that much difference because I didn't go that high with my ISOs anyway. Well, if you really want a high megapixel camera like the Z7, then the Z8 and the Z9 are the new gen alternatives, and they're heavily advanced, more than the Z7. The Z8 and Z9 have fully electronic shutters, so there's no mechanical thing going up, and it gives a much faster readout, completely silent shooting, 20 frames per second, and the readout is faster, so you won't get the warbling and things like that. So like with the Z6 III, has a partially stacked sensor, you can choose between mechanical and electronic, and the mechanical has the same frames per second as the ZF, but if you turn to electronic version on the Z6 III, then you get 20 frames per second, although the readout isn't as fast as it is on the Z8 and Z9, so you might get some warbling and some dynamic range issues. And that's where the ZF, sorry if this is confusing, so this is why the ZF and the Z6 I and II might be better if you're really into dynamic range. It allegedly has one stop extra dynamic range if you need to bring up those shadows in deep shadows, or you know, if you're in a high contrast situation. In reality, I'm not sure it makes much difference to everyday shooting. It's only in these extremes that you might find them different. So is a Z6 I and II worth the upgrade to a Z6 III if you need that autofocus ability? And yes, I love it. Using the two different cameras, because the ZF has the same autofocus system, it really is night and day. If you want to use eye autofocus like I am now for these videos, it's 100%, it never fails. Maybe on a whole day, it's about 98%, and you just got to choose the area which you want the eye focus to be in. So if there's lots of people in the frame, then maybe choose one or wider, depending. But it's the same for wildlife. Obviously wildlife's a lot quicker, but The two engines, the two systems, you'll be amazed with the new gen of cameras, how good they are with autofocus. But if you only need single point and shoot, then Z6 1 and 2, Z7 1 and 2, Z50, the old gen are fine. I mean, I still use my Z6 1 weekly from a student and for filming. Single point AFF has beautiful 4K 30 and it does a beautiful job. So I believe all cameras can do 4K 30 and that covers the whole range. It's when you want to use the slow motion versions. So like my ZF can't do 4K 120, but my Z8 can. This can do beautiful 4K 120. And so can the Z6 III. And the Z6 III can also do 1080 240. What divides a lot of people is the flappy screen. So with this Z8, it's a tilting screen. And with the Z6 III and the ZF, you have the video articulating flappy screen. A lot of people hate it, some people love it. For stills, I prefer the tilting screen. And for video, I prefer the fully articulating screen. I wish they did both. Maybe in future generations, they will be able to tilt and articulate at the same time. Who knows? So the main difference, so if you're thinking about, well, what's the difference between the ZF and the Z6 III? They both have the new gen autofocus technology, both fantastic. For me, the ZF is about the ergonomics. So with the ZF, it's a really nice camera to pick up. I like to use it. I use it for my city travel everyday camera, but also as my secondary camera for events. But the grip and the dials can be fiddly. And even with the small rig grip on top of the ZF, I prefer the Z6 model handle. It's like a tool. It's just like the Z8 here, you know, it's great to handle. I can hold this with all different lenses all day, and all the buttons are ready to use and easy to get at. With the ZF, it's more fiddly. It's a longer, smaller body, but similar weight. And yeah, so if I'm using two cameras for doing a job, I would prefer to have a Z6 III or a Z8 for the handling. The difference between the Z8 and the Z9, well, the Z9 has a bigger battery compartment and a few other things, but generally the Z8 is, I'd say, 90% of what a Z9 is, probably even more. And then there's the Z5, which hasn't been upgraded to the new gen yet. It's a full frame, cheap body, but it has image stabilization built in, which is appealing to me. But it doesn't have the new processor with a new autofocus technology. So they probably release that next year, I would think. In-body image stabilization, and all Nikon full-frame cameras have IBIS, and they're all brilliant. I think the later versions of the cameras have slightly better IBIS, but they're all great. The only ones that don't are the DX or crop sensors, like the Z50 Mark 1 and 2, unfortunately, doesn't have it, and the ZFC. And that does make a big difference. For low light photography and video work, I find IBIS to be an essential part of how great these cameras are. So some of the bad things about the new gen line of cameras is the battery life. The Z8 is really poor. I have it on the energy saving mode as possible, but it goes through batteries really, really quickly. In a full day event, I go through 3 batteries, probably. Whereas my ZF goes through about 2. So there are many other things from each camera model, old gen and new gen, that might appeal to you. So like the frames per second, the buffer, like the continuous video recording for an hour or over the 30 minutes. These are things that you might consider to be essential for you. Like, I love the Z8, how I can go. It's completely silent unless I tell it to be. And it's good to look at Photography Life. They're an amazing website and they do side-by-side comparisons. Really does help you see the differences between them. So I think the main difference for me and why I upgraded was the autofocus ability. The response of the camera is so much faster, so much more intuitive. There's several things that come together for the new gen, which make it worthwhile for me to upgrade from the old gen to the new gen. But if you don't need the fancy, I call it fancy, but it's the auto eye technology and if you do wildlife, I find it's a major difference as well using the new gen cameras, then yes, it is worth the upgrade. And the price differences as well. So I've ignored the price till now because Every country has their own price structures, the different promotions throughout the year. Although generally the ZF is the cheapest full frame Nikon you can get. And then you've got the Z6 III, which has just gone down a lot in price now, because when the Z6 III was launched, the Z8 wasn't that much difference in price, because this went on a promo, and Loz and I recommended that you go for a Z8 over the Z6 because this is a better camera and wasn't much difference. But there is a big price difference now of about £1,000 over here. So is there anything about the old gen and the new gen which are important to you, which I haven't mentioned, which you think maybe should go in this comparison? So I hope this has been helpful, and I'll update this when I get feedback from you guys and when new things come out. So I hope this helps, and see you next time.